and then he was diagnosed with autism. You are either insane or not. Pagal hai ya nahi hai, that's it. I was told he would be non-verbal and he may not ever normalize, it's just a gamble. So since my birth, my mother suffered from auditory hallucinations and schizophrenia. I crave for a lot of love and affection since the time I was actually born. I had an intrinsic inherent inclination for sports. I realized later that maybe it was because of the lack of optimum nutrition. My mother was so sick she could not cook. I'm an IFBB Pro League bodybuilding athlete and IFBB Pro League international judge. I'm also a writer. I am a Bharatanatyam dancer and a student of Kalri Payat. I have a business in New Delhi. And I'm also a World Peace Ambassador with the Work Hard Foundation, which is affiliated to the United Nations. So today I would like to tell you a bit about my journey, which the impactful aspect of it started much later, and with context to our needs of self-actualization. Very sure of this. So Abraham Maslow says, "What a man can be, he must be." Take all these safety, security in the world, and for all their importance, they cannot fulfill the need to fulfill our inner self or complete the person or the pyramid that constitutes the need within. Self-actualization, according to the need hierarchy, represents the highest order of motivation that drives us to complete our inner self and achieve our fullest potential. Self-actualization needs are also known as our being needs. It represents our creative and personal achievement and can be fulfilled by achieving our potential. To be self-actualized, you need to explore yourself. And as we do so, we create our own set of activities and pathways depending on our capabilities and circumstances. So unless and until we have explored ourselves and failed over and over again, tried things and failed over again, we cannot complete the journey of our inner self. And therefore, both temporary failures and failures to a dead end are extremely important to create our own unique, definitive, creative pathways. While temporary failures tell us that we need to push harder, a failure to a dead end tells us when to stop and take an alternative path altogether. Without failures, our journeys would be too scattered and blurred. So the very concept of accepting failures and in fact being very thankful for it can be very gratifying, and how special and easy it becomes when you actually embrace failure and say that, wow, now I know my next step for sure. God is unfolding the mystery of my life. So we need to look at ourselves as a soul with a body and not a body with a soul. Only then we can look at our own journey, the story of our life, with a parallel sense of detachment. So when we know that when we need to really stop and explore other areas of creativity, we realize that there is a whole new world out there, further and beyond, and you might just merge with your true calling. This is when we begin multitasking to explore other things. This is when we begin touching the periphery of the area of creativity. This is when we begin to widen our horizons of thinking and discover our potentials. This is when we begin to round off our persona to make it more complete. This is when we can tell ourselves and exemplify to the world that this unique, unconventional, weird combination is very much possible and sustainable. So I'd like to tell you today a bit about my journey from the point of view of achievement in spite of all the challenges, and I hope that you can take something away from it today and get it in context, in perspective. So since my birth, my mother suffered from auditory hallucinations and schizophrenia. So needless to say that I craved for a lot of love and affection since the time I was actually born. And the only way out for me from the very beginning was to put my best foot forward and excel in everything I did. And that was, of course, now. That becomes conditional. Now I only give unconditionally so, and I actually discovered this about myself. So as we go on in our journey, then when we talk about learning, as you all are students, whatever you learn today is having a lot of relevance and significance, no matter how significant it seems. So I would take the things from my childhood, which I might have not done since ages now, say small things like say sewing or knitting or embroidery, or in those days maybe playing the banjo or the old school typewriter, practicing on it. Many of that I haven't done since ages. But the foundational values of precision and perception of beauty and aesthetics and the eye for detail, seeing the divine in the detail, have stayed with me since ever. And the most important lesson that I learned during these lessons was the art of learning. So learning how to learn is probably the most important lesson that you learn as a student. And of course, we talk about sports, it's all coming up now, but we didn't have that kind of options for fun and entertainment in those days. And outdoor play was an integral part of probably everybody's childhood. And when it came to me, I had an intrinsic, inherent inclination for sports, but I felt that what I had in my mind would not somehow physically manifest itself and actualize, So I realized later that maybe it was because of the lack of optimum nutrition. As I told you, my mother was so sick, she could not cook. She was responding to auditory hallucinations in a very violent way. And so time happened and life happened by virtue of destiny. I got married very early with the hope of receiving a lot of love and affection from my in-laws and probably getting an opportunity to study so that I could rise and shine the way I wanted to always. Long things cut short, I soon realized I had it in my mind that since I was going to a household that is just it's a normal, there's no mentally sick person there, and it's a normal household. I thought it will end like a fairy tale, like Cinderella or Snow White probably, and I would live happily ever after. And I soon realized that it was impossible in a typical orthodox patriarch Indian family. It was not possible. So a lot of my dreams were, of course, shattered at that stage. And then after a while, my son was born, and I thought that now I will have a friend forever. I will do everything I can to help him succeed and do well in his life in whichever field he wants, and to the best of my potential capabilities as well as limitations, I would give him all the opportunities to fulfill his need of self-actualization. And time passed and he was not talking, and then I explored all the possibilities. I was frantic, of course, and then he was diagnosed with autism. So autism was not well known in those times, and it was one doctor in All India Institute of Medical Sciences who told me this is a kind of a buzzword. At that time there was a kind of a dichotomy. You are either insane or not. Pagal hai ya nahi hai, that's it. There's nothing like anything in between. In fact, neurodiverse and neurotypical, these words and these terminologies have come only, they have come forth in the recent future, maybe the last 5 years. I had to explore this possibility, and I actually wrote to one of my uncles in US who sent me some literature. I studied the Encyclopedia Britannica, and I observed a lot of psychotherapists who would teach children with other disorders, which were very visible, conspicuous disorders. And I devised my own therapeutic modalities, flashcards and picture books and stuff like that. And I was told he would be non-verbal, and you may have to work for say 20 years or 25 years, and then he may not ever normalize. It's just a gamble. You may have to work say 36 hours every 24 hours for 2 decades, and nothing may come out of it. And what would happen to my self-respect and dignity and my economic independence and stuff like that, my future? So it was quite a gamble, But then long things cut short. Today he's a postgraduate from UK. He's doing an online job with with a foundation with autism, and he has done his education in classical music from Prayag Sangeet Samiti, Allahabad. And also he helps me in my works. He types my articles which I write, and he looks after the household account. So it's functional. He's still autistic. There are still challenges. It is not absolute perfection, but then he's still there. He's very much there. So I do go and visit certain events, and I present him, because earlier I used to hide this, but now I feel that it is an example. When we set an example, we are adding to the collective consciousness and helping people out. So I talk about it, and I think it does help a lot of people. So they say that when you apply mehndi, that henna to someone's hand, your own hands also imbibe the color. So it's kind of a metaphorical interpretation of the fact that when you do good to someone, good things come back to you. So in the process of teaching him, getting him through his education and university education, and by hook or by crook, that's another story, and then his music classes. I did my education all over again. I too trained in music, and autistic children have cerebral hypoplasia, which is responsible for balance. The cerebellum is responsible for balance, and in order to stimulate that part of the brain, I taught him a lot of balancing exercises. So both of us, we did a lot of swimming and skating championships and won medals. So it used to be one kind of an example that we mother and child, we do it together. And I remember that at that time also, early 90s, when he was small, a lot of mothers used to look up to me that we can do it at that age also, and that was in 90s. So so I would say one thing, that when you are through a difficult journey, when you're doing something which other people are not able to comprehend, you will be criticized. So so was I, because a lot of people thought that I'm out to do something impossible, it's a waste, and I'm not maybe paying enough attention to the family or the relatives and so on. But I felt that becoming the bad person in everybody's eyes is also a part of my sacrifice for the larger cause. It maybe especially stands for politicians, that sometimes you get a lot of criticism, but you're very clear about your vision, that you have a cause and you are standing by it strong. Gulping venom silently and still standing tall, and that is inspired by Lord Shiva. So if you have a family member in the neurodiverse spectrum, you may face isolation, and you must actually use that isolation to enrich your soul and enhance your skills. So it was for teaching him weight training that I actually went to train him at the gym, and it was in this process that I, 20 years ago, if you go to a gym, you were criticized that what is this woman up to? You shouldn't be training with heavy weights. You shouldn't be doing this. Is this not meant for women? And that is how it was for helping out my son, actually, that I went on to compete across the world, and I became one of the first pioneering women bodybuilders from India. And today I am the first and the only IFBB women bodybuilding international judges from Asia. So this is my thank you. This is my son's gift to me. So if you have a problem, we just do our karma and we leave everything to God. We have a parent up there. That's his problem now, and God will take care of everything. That's been my motto. That when I am in a sticky situation, I always say that I just do my work, and then God will take care of that. That's just God's problem. It's not really my problem. So coming back to the neurodiverse spectrum, if you have, if you're bringing up a child who is having a challenge, one of the things you learn is to break down every apparently impossible thing into tiny micro steps, which you hadn't even visualized. We take so many things for granted. You sit, stand, talk, say hello, and you point fingers. Even these things have so much detailing in the mind and the human body, and the transmission of messages in the nerves and so on. So this is such a complex situation, actually. So as you conquer each tiny micro step, you realize that nothing is impossible. Everything is possible. It gives you tremendous faith and confidence. And even if you fall apart in life and you come back to square one, you know that you can again create, recreate, and that really keeps you at peace with yourself, because you know that you always have control and power, because you've done it all yourself, bit by bit, bit by bit. So I talk about multitasking when I do various things. As I introduced myself to you, I told you that these are the kind of activities that I do. Yes, it's challenging, but the very diversity of things that you do when you're multitasking can be very refreshing. The only challenge is that you need to be able to shift focus and then align and realign, and again shift focus and repeatedly do that. And that requires a certain level of discipline and a meditative state. And nevertheless, repetition in itself should never be perceived as redundant or boring, especially if it is for practice and consistency. So even if you don't feel like practicing something, it has to be done to keep the art and the strength alive. So as you, with every repetition that you make, it becomes a deeper and greater part of your being. And then you begin perceiving it differently and applying it in your creative endeavors. So every time you read a book over and again, repeat a movement, or perform something repeatedly with conscious awareness, it begins to align itself in harmony with the universe. The physicality of it manifests itself in you. So I would say that relish every moment and every breath that you take in this world, and then you will begin to see the divine in every tiny flower, every blade of grass, and every apparently mundane activity. So live your life unapologetically, pursue your passions unapologetically. You need to live your life to the fullest. If you have any doubts in your mind, you will never be able to know your true calling in this world. The purpose of your life, you will never know that. So I would say just live your life to the fullest, and I hope that in your quest you are able to fulfill your need of self-actualization. I, being supremely connected to infinite things, I value my presence before you today. Thank you.